On the eve of Star Wars release, 20th Century Fox, George Lucas, and the cast and crew braced themselves for the worst. One way or another, May 25th, 1977, would be a day they'd never forget.
Opening shot was one of the most important shots in the movie for the visual effects, because if the audience bought that shot, you had them.
The combined chest of everybody just kind of went, air was sucked out of the place. And then when the white Star Destroyer came overhead, I teared up. It was so powerful. I had seen that scene, but without music, without context, it's not the same thing.
We're doomed.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
There was this sort of weird electric kind of reaction. One had never seen anything like it.
I'm gonna make the jump to light speed.
I had never experienced special effects that were so real. I was dazzled.
I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you.
This is not rescue.
I loved it because I loved the story and I loved the characters.
Will somebody get this big walking carpet out of my way? Good luck.
I thought that it was revolutionary. This is a work of genius.
The Force will be with you, always.
We were in shock. I felt like we were blasted in the back of our seats. I said, man, that was... Who worked on this?
I'm going in.
Use the Force, Luke.
I have you now. What?
The theater was jammed full of people right down to the front, and there was a lot of hollering and cheering going on.
You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home.
After it was over, everyone was like on cloud nine. Just kind of in shock. We had no clue what we were on.
It was wonderful.
I remember leaving the theater and having these kids ask us for autographs. I said, no, you don't want our autograph. We're like model builders. No, we want you to sign this. So we were thinking, wow, this must mean something. People are asking for our autograph.
Everybody's standing up and applauding. I've never seen this before in my life. I mean, and I'll never see it again. We released, I think, in 37 theaters initially and broke 36 house records.
I was completely shocked.
You got an amazing response. I used to drive by and look at the lines and think, what? I mean, it was the first sort of blockbuster.
George Lucas' Star Wars lifted us out of our sort of depression of the 70s and into an awareness and a focus on space and its possible future. This movie stood by itself.
Timing is everything in art. You bring out Star Wars too early and it's Buck Rogers. You bring it out too late and it doesn't fit our imagination. You bring it out just as the war in Vietnam is ending, when America feels uncertain of itself, when the old stories have died. And you bring it out at that time and suddenly it's a new game. Also, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to watch Star Wars.
People started seeing the world in the terms that Star Wars had laid down.
People would say, "May the Force be with you." It was a kind of code almost. It proved that you were one of the people who had seen the film, and you were connecting with other people who had seen the film. Star Wars became like a kind of handshake.
In the wake of Star Wars, everyone's careers were changed. Overnight, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford had become household names.
I felt like this. Great. Terrific. Now I can go to work. Now I have an opportunity to take advantage of the success of this film and go to work. And as much as life changed for us, it changed for George as well.
About a month after it was released, I said, okay, it's a hit. I can now go ahead. I can make my other movies. I'm going to do this.
Ironically, the independent filmmaker who wanted nothing to do with corporate Hollywood was now credited with reinvigorating it. In 3 weeks, Fox's stock price doubled to a record high.
A bunch of the guys I remember at that point ran out and bought a bunch of stock in Fox. I wasn't smart enough.
The greatest profit that 20th Century Fox had ever made in a single year was $37 million. And in whatever that year, 77, 78, whatever that year was, they made a profit of $79 million. That was Star Wars.
The cultural impact of Lucas's outer space story was greater than anything even he could have imagined. Not just in the United States, but around the globe.
It wasn't a story of cultures, it wasn't a story of nationalities, it wasn't a story of geography. It was a story of mankind escaping his environment to a life which everybody expects to happen, but George Lucas was able to illustrate for us. This was what made it a success worldwide.
The movie did spectacular business across Europe, but when Alan Ladd Jr. attended the premiere in Japan 1 year later, he feared that the silence which followed the screening indicated that Star Wars would be a flop. He was relieved when he later found out that silence was the greatest compliment a Japanese audience could give a film.
We had the footprint ceremony in the Chinese theater.
R2-D2, hurry up.
Everybody over, please. Thousands of people showed up. So we were sure by then that there was much more to it than just the science fiction audience.
R2-D2 goes in. He made about a 7-inch impression. And the crowd is chanting for Darth Vader.
Not surprisingly, Star Wars' greatest fans were children. They thrilled to the fantasy adventures of Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Princess Leia. And they were eager to bring the experience of the movie home with them. But little Star Wars merchandise was available for the first few months after its premiere. To help promote the movie, Lucasfilm's Charles Lippincott had tried to attract potential licensees before the film opened. But prior to Star Wars, there had been few successful motion picture licensing campaigns, and Lippincott's attempts were flatly rejected. Just one company, Kenner Toys, signed on shortly before Star Wars opened. Kenner didn't believe the film would be a hit, but they were interested in creating a modest line of colorful space toys. When Star Wars became a smash, they were caught completely off guard. Unable to produce toys in time for Christmas orders, Kenner resorted to selling boxed vouchers for Star Wars action figures.
There wasn't anything available when the film came out. There wasn't even anything available for the following Christmas of '77. That was the infamous empty box campaign, where the idea proposed by Kenner was that there'd be these wonderful boxes with all the Star Wars illustrations on them, and the kid would get this for Christmas, and he'd open it up, and there'd be a little certificate in there saying, you can get this toy in March.
The Star Wars Early Bird Certificate Package, new from Kenner.
I lit up when I found out that they were going to make my face a mask on a box of cereal with little dots where to cut my eyes out. The idea of me being on bubblegum cards, you know, I thought you had to have athletic ability to be a bubblegum card. So I enjoyed the merchandising aspect of it.
You know, we signed to wear a likeness, so when I look in the mirror, I have to pay George a couple of bucks. you're not really famous until you're a Pez dispenser. But, you know, you sort of realize I'm not really famous. Princess Leia is. And I look like her. And owe George a couple of bucks.
For Lucas, protecting the quality and integrity of his vision became as important as gaining his financial independence from Hollywood studios. Merchandising offered a means to an end, one that helped fuel support for more Star Wars films, as well as other important projects.
In the world of merchandising, oh goodness gracious, people came to us with ideas all the time, every day, day and night, from all over the world for Star Wars merchandise. We were the ones in those days to say, no, sorry, that doesn't fit into our plan.
At the 1978 Academy Awards, Star Wars earned an impressive 10 Oscar nominations and took home 7, including statues for Best Visual Effects, Sound, Editing, and Production Design.
It was terrific. I don't know. It was great. It was like a dream come true. It's the American dream.
I wound up winning the Academy Award for Star Wars before I'd even started thinking about winning an Academy Award. My goal was to get another job.
While it didn't win for Best Picture, its nomination was quite an achievement for George Lucas and his kids' movie. In addition to industry acclaim, Star Wars earned more money than any movie in history. After years of fighting uphill battles, Lucas could finally call his own shots with the studios. When Fox approached him about doing the inevitable sequel, it was the moment the filmmaker had long been waiting for.
This was a perfect opportunity to become independent of the Hollywood system. I didn't mind releasing it through them, but it was really going to them for the money and them saying, well, I like the script, but I want to change, or the film is good, but we want to make these changes. That's the part I wanted to avoid. I decided I was going to finance the film myself, that I was going to make it completely independently.
The rule in Hollywood is never put your own money in any film, even your own film. But George was self-financing The Empire Strikes Back, but he was doing it through the bank, and we were talking about close to a $30 million film at the time. But because of the huge success of the first picture and of the revenues that were still rolling in, and merchandising was very strong. It was a gamble, but a gamble that he knew would pay off.
With his earnings from Star Wars, Lucas was able to secure a bank loan for The Empire Strikes Back. Empire's original budget was $25 million, more than twice that of the first film.
We would meet at Medway, which was George's San Francisco office, and look at the illustrations while George was writing the script. And Gary Kurtz would fly in occasionally from London, and Ralph McQuarrie would send down drawings, conceptual designs, as well as Joe Johnson.
The Empire Strikes Back would reunite much of the Star Wars cast. It would also move the story in new directions, digging more deeply into the emotions of the characters.
George had been given enormous license by the success of Star Wars. And so when he started talking to me about the Empire script that didn't exist, he knew what had happened in the story, and it was very dark stuff. I was delighted that it was not going to be a rehash of Star Wars. But in fact, after having set the whole thing up and gotten a rousing start, you launch into the second act in which everything goes to hell. And that's usually the best act in a play.
Empire would also open the door to a romance between Han Solo and Princess Leia. But this time, George Lucas wasn't getting in the director's chair.
It was just too hard to set up a company, get the money, get the film made, and also be down there on the set every day trying to direct it. So I decided I'd hire a director.
I was asked by George to come to lunch at Universal, and he said, how would you like to do the second Star Wars? We had no title for it at that point. And I said, gee, George, I don't think so. It's a phenomenal hit as a picture. A second one can only be a second one. It can't be as good because the first one is the breakthrough. And I told my agent about the meeting, and he said, "Are you crazy? Do it."